This podcast is being brought to you by WXAV 88.3 FM and WXAV.com. WXAV, bringing the best podcasts to you.
Hi, this is Peter Kreten, host of the Rockology on WXAV 88.3 FM, and welcome to my exclusive interview with Nick Campbell, better known as Left Vessel. In this interview, Nick discusses how he created a musical instrument using a tree, his interest in sound, and what college radio means to him. Here now, my interview with Nick Campbell. How did you first get involved with music?
My dad was a musician and always was playing music for us as little kids. So it's been something that's been a big part of my life since I can remember. And then, sort of normal things, started playing in bands and in high school and just like connecting with other musicians. And then, there's no crazy origin story. Just it was a big part of my life growing up with my family, and I carried it forward. So it's been a natural thing for me.
That's awesome. And those are usually like the best stories too and everything.
Yeah. There's a lot of specific memories and things to go into, I guess, but there was no like single moment where it was like, aha, music. But, it's just always sort of there, which is, cool.
Now, your new album is called One and Driftless, and it's a really interesting album because it's very experimental. And one of the main ways you experiment on this is you kind of created a brand new instrument called the Arbo. What is the Arbo? And can you kind of discuss a little bit about the philosophy behind it of how you went about creating it? Because this blows my mind.
Oh, cool. I'm glad you enjoy it. Yeah, it was a fun thing to sort of put together. The Arbo is basically taking a living tree and just stringing it. I usually just use piano wire and weighting that piano wire, and then you bow it. So, it's just like a massive, violin without a fretboard. And then put contact mics on the tree so you pick up the vibrations and you can record it or amplify it. It makes some noise just naturally as well, but not very loud. And it's sort of a nice thing. It doesn't hurt the tree. So, I'll be honest, the reason I initially did it was I was just thinking of interesting ways to make music because I like to do little sound art projects. I've done things in galleries for several years now, finding sort of different wacky ways to create, beautiful or hopefully beautiful music. And so I was literally just sitting around. I was like, well, it'd be cool to make music with a living tree. I wonder how you do that. And so there wasn't necessarily like a deep thought initially. It was more just sort of a fun idea. And so I started experimenting with different ways you could do it. And some of them were like way too complex and wild, just trying to make these contraptions. And eventually I realized it was actually insanely simple. You could just drape a wire over a tree, and if you weight that wire down with something, it creates tension, and you have a wire you can play as an instrument. And you can put multiple strings on a tree or whatever. Then you can mic that up and do anything with the sound you want with it. And so initially, just sort of a basic fun thought. And then as I started to actually work on it, and I ended up spending about 10 days doing an artist residency in Minnesota, out in the Driftless area, sort of out in the woods, and just focusing on that 100%. And it started to become like really emotionally impactful, like sitting in the woods recording and working with the tree. And I am someone that cares, I'm greatly concerned about the climate situation and the environment, as, many, and maybe even most people at this point are. And it did start to symbolize something as I was there sort of working with this one tree day after day, just in the woods being with nature. I realized I was working on music in a way I never had before, that I was literally outside, running a really long extension cable to get my computer out there to recording with nature, and actually using it to create musical sound, not just in like, a lot of people have done, record sounds in nature and build beautiful sound pieces out of it, but actually performing like, written music with the help of a live organism, this live tree. It just started to symbolize to me this idea of like, finding ways to work with nature instead of extracting from nature. You know, instead of cutting down a tree and making a guitar or piano, using that tree, working with it, and then leaving it to continue living its life. You know, and of course I was still using a computer and other extractive materials. I'm not going to claim that, you know, it's a perfect thing, but it became symbolic to me and really meaningful. And so it is something that I really want to build upon and find more ways to express that idea, because it started to feel like something worthwhile at this point in time.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible how you're trying to find that balance and leave as little of a footprint as possible. Now, did you experiment with like trees, like you know, did one tree sound different than the other? Like, how did you determine, okay, this is the one I'm going to use?
Yeah, they do. But the tree that I ended up recording with on the album, it sounded good compared to the others. But the reason I picked it is more about height and the branches. So, you know, I literally just walked around the woods where I was staying and found a tree that had branches that could hold the weight. So, of course, I didn't want to break any branches off, but also had a branch height that was at an appropriate level so I could easily perform with it and, you know, wouldn't have to be draping piano wire from 20 feet above me. So it was actually more practical than artistic, the reason I picked the tree. But it was a beautiful little tree and, you know, had some healthy, good branches that made for good work good for stringing up the piano wire, so it worked out well. But yes, different trees do have like different tonalities, you know, and a lot of that I'm sure is just the thickness of the branch or the kind of bark. That's something I absolutely want to explore more with, 100%. You know, I have not taken this concept as far as it can go for sure, and so the things I'm excited to do with it are, like you said, test different kinds of trees to see how far those variances go, and then also just doing ensemble pieces with lots of people playing them is sort of the next vision that I'm working towards.
Oh, that's awesome. Stay tuned for the next album from Left Vessel coming soon.
There you go, yeah. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that this album, it's beautiful, it was recorded in the Driftless region in Minnesota. How did this region kind of influence, you know, your writing for this record?
Yeah. Well, so first of all, I'm going to say that the record's cut into two pieces, really. Some of it is in the Driftless region, and then some of it's recorded in studios, mostly around Los Angeles, which is where I was living at the time. And so, you know, it all ended up sort of coming together in a really beautiful way and speaking to a bigger picture. But the Driftless, the stuff that was recorded there is 100% inspired by that area. I didn't have any songs written when I got there. I went there with a plan. You know, I knew what I wanted to do, but I wanted to write the music there on the spot. So that music is any of the songs on the record that are titled Driftless specifically are the ones that were 100% recorded there. And I did some more pieces of music there, but those are the only ones I really ended up putting on the record. And, you know, those were written there in the woods, just, you know, playing along and sort of commenting on what I was experiencing there. So I mean, it couldn't be disconnected from the nature there. It was definitely, you know, the music wouldn't have existed without my time spent there.
That's awesome. Now, my favorite track on the record is This Year Be. It's a beautiful song, and it's got an absolutely stunning music video. Can you kind of talk a little bit about how that music video was created?
Yeah, you know, I worked with a videographer who was sort of like, we basically just shot back and forth thoughts on different images that would make sense with the images are in the music, but which ones to sort of highlight and how. And, you know, how that song came about is an interesting one. I have an aunt who is a shaman, and she's just a really fascinating person. And for a while we were doing, it actually started with the tree thing. When I was having this tree idea, she's really into trees and was like, well, let's do some shamanic journeying. And and like meet some trees and see what they're supposed to sound like and what they want to do. Anyway, we ended up not sticking with it as long. I want to go back to that because I think we could end up doing something really fun and cool with that. But in the course of those, she basically just taught me the method that people use to do shamanic journeying. It's almost like a form of meditation, except the opposite of like, meditation. You try to quiet your mind and like ideally reach like almost like a beautiful nothingness. Whereas with shamanic journeying, it's almost the opposite. You invite, at least in the way that she was teaching me it, it's like, you sort of let everything rush at you and like capture those images. And doing that with her was what inspired that song. It's reflected. Lots happened historically in the last few years that have been really sort of dark and difficult for all of us. And so the song was sort of about reflecting on a year, looking back and looking forward, but it came out of the shamanic journey. I don't know if I'm connecting ideas very well. It was like all these things sort of came together, all these visions I was having from these shamanic journeys mixed with sort of the difficulties of the year and looking ahead and hoping that hoping for a better future for everyone, which anyway, that was sort of what that was about, and tried to capture some of that imagery in the video.
That's beautiful. Now, I kind of want to shift gears for a moment, because on your website, and you mentioned it earlier, that you've done some sound experiments, and you're a sound artist. What is it about sound that kind of excites you? Yeah.
Well, I think the reason I started focusing on anything in a sound art way, well, a few things. So first of all, like years ago at the Art Institute there in Chicago, I grew up in Ohio,
mm-hmm.
and we'd go to Chicago, go to the big city every now and then, and I was there and saw an art exhibit or an installation by Bill Viola, this beautiful video artist,
mm-hmm.
and like it just like blew my mind. Like if anyone listening to this or yourself, if you ever have a chance to go see a Bill Viola installation, do yourself a favor and go just do it. It was really impactful, like totally changed my life. And that was just sort of always in the back end of my mind. Like it was just this way of having like interactive art gallery sort of experience. Not truly interactive maybe, but just really impactful, moving art gallery experience. Was sort of out of the norm. So that was always in the back of my mind as something just I found really beautiful. And that somewhere in my mind I was like, oh, maybe someday I could find a way to do things like that, and I don't even know what that means, and I still don't necessarily, but then I went on and started doing music and, have my first band out of New York, and we toured for years and recorded and did the whole thing, and that band came to an end, next band started, so like normal music, just life, playing with bands, touring, doing the whole thing, and somewhere along the line I did start to think back to that kind of experience and think like, how could I connect the music I love to write with the art gallery and find a way to really make it uniquely impactful. And I love making records. I love playing with bands, or just, like Left Vessel is just like myself with random musicians here and there. But so I'm in no way talking down on that. It's a really important experience for artists and people that love listening to it. But, music has, like, we've all seen it, like, first sort of like the Napsterification and the Spotification. It's like there's just so much music in the world to be experienced that, like, there are times when I release a record, I just sort of feel like I'm, like spitting in the ocean or something. It's like,
yeah,
it's like, it's just like, oh my God, like I'm this music means a lot to me, and I'm grateful to put it out and have it shared. But I do sometimes wonder, like, am I just making noise? Like, I can't tell. And so that I started to gravitate more towards, not more, I shouldn't say, but gravitate as well to doing things in a different setting with the art gallery, just because it felt like a unique way of approaching it that did not feel like it was just one of, 10,000 people doing it at any given moment. And so it was sort of initially just me attempting to find a different way to express my music in a way that maybe felt a little fresher. And then connecting that back to the experiences I've loved in art galleries, and just trying to figure out how to connect those two. So what the sound has really been for me is a conduit to look at written music in a different way. Like I love songwriting. I don't think I'll ever be like a purely ambient like artist where it's just like ambient or conceptual installation without like melody or form.
Mm-hmm.
I love melody and form so much. And that's something that I've always been trying to connect. And I've got a lot of more work to do. You know, like I want to dig deeper and figure out how to really do this very well and keep it growing, but bring melody and musical form into an art gallery context where it combines with sort of conceptual sound. And so that's been something I've been working on for a long time. I've done a handful of gallery installations and various events, and that led me, of course, to what I did in the Driftless region as well. So it all sort of connects at this point in my life.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. And I think you bring up a good point, because it's almost like we are overwhelmed with everything. We have information overload. Because we have everything with YouTube, Spotify. It's just at the touch of your finger, which leads me into my final question. But before we get to that, Nick, if they want to check you out, how can they go and check you out? What's your website?
Yeah, the website is leftvessel.com, LEFTVESSEL.com. And then, of course, you can also just search it on any of your music listening services. I don't discriminate. It's everywhere on the internet. And luckily, I don't think there are no other Left Vessels out there. I've picked a unique enough name, so you should find me if you search it.
Yes, leftvessel.com. Be sure to check it out. But you bring up an interesting point, Nick, and I think it ties back into what WXAV is, which is a college radio station. How do you see college radio? How do you view it as part of that musical journey for musicians?
Yeah.
And how has college radio affected you and your career?
Oh, that is such a cool question, and no one's ever asked that. And it's actually been very, very important to my career. I have, I've been playing with bands since the late 2000s and releasing records, on labels and independently and the whole mix. And college radio has been crucial in a few different ways. So I'm just going to sort of list off the top of my head, and I may miss stuff. Like I said, no one's ever asked this. So I've never thought of it in that context before, but it's such a cool question. Like, on one level, I look at college radio as a network, like just this amazing network of people that are dedicated to great music in a way that you don't find everywhere else. So in one level, it's just all the people working at college radio are such passionate, like, music listeners and sharers. And that's just such a cool thing to engage with on any level. And so, like, I've always looked at that as a cool thing on its own. But then beyond that, college radio is a conduit for artists that just don't really have access, obviously, to like mainstream radio. They don't have like multi-million-dollar budgets. It's a way to be shared with a larger audience that just doesn't really exist otherwise. So I mean, that from just a functional getting music out there standpoint, like, super crucial. And then, it's been I haven't gotten to do this yet with Left Vessel because of the pandemic, but with previous bands doing radio shows and, while on tour, stopping at the stations that have been playing the music and meeting the people and doing on-air performances and stuff like that has also been such a cool way in the past of making some relationships and also just engaging with communities that you wouldn't necessarily know otherwise because, they're in different parts of the country that you don't engage with usually. And so, I mean, more than anything, it's just this supportive network that I don't know if there's any other network like it at this point now that so much of music is online, to have like a physical network of passionate music lovers, listeners, sharers, it's a cool and important thing.
That is absolutely incredible. Probably one of the greatest answers I've ever gotten for the college radio question. So thank you so much, Nick. Again, leftvessel.com. Be sure to check him out. Actually, just one final quick question. Any plans on hitting the road anytime soon?
I'm looking at it in spring of next year. I'm discussing with I have an upcoming project that with another artist named Ben. So we've already finished a record together, and hopefully by then everything will be normal enough in life again that it'll make sense to book a tour. So it would be me and him hitting the road together, doing some of our own individual projects, and also playing the record that we've finished but not yet released. So yeah, if all goes well, next spring, this early next year, next spring or so, finally hitting the road. And, I should be playing some shows around the Pacific Northwest here and there, but before then. But yeah, the next consistent, consolidated group of shows will be then. Yeah.
And be sure to check it out, leftfestival.com, for all the latest news and information. Nick, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time as well. And thanks again for playing the music.
Thank you very much for listening to this WXAV 88.3 FM podcast. Be sure to visit our website, WXAV.com, for more information on your escape from ordinary radio.